Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today we have our guest, Mike Vacca. And in today's podcast, you're going to find out how Mike Vacca scaled his martial arts locations to 3 locations and another 3 locations that he licenses out his martial arts system. Plus, for those who are looking for like an exit plan later in life, you'll find out how he actually sold 2 of those locations for $1.2 million. So, Mike, thank you for being here today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, Mike, tell us, before we dive in too much, tell us a little bit about your martial arts background. Like, how did you get started?
Unlike a lot of martial artists in the industry today, I didn't start until I was out of high school. I was almost 18 years old when I started training, and lived in Northeast Philadelphia, and there was a local karate school, and that's where I started the whole endeavor.
So at what point when you were training did you discover like you wanted to do this professionally?
An opportunity was brought to me as I was like a brown belt, about 2.5, 3 years into training, where someone asked if I wanted to partner in a school with them. And, at that point I didn't have any money and limited skills. And I thought, like, how could I do this? And my partner assured me, he's like, listen, I'll put up some of the money if you go down and run the classes, and we'll kind of like, we'll make it work together. So it was like almost an accident in the way it developed. But quickly after we started the school and began running the program, we were very successful. And I realized, like, this is something that I have a passion for, I'm really good at, and made it my career.
So I want to back up on that for a second. So you were only a brown belt at the time.
Correct. I was not a black belt when I opened my first school.
Did you feel like, holy crap, like I'm not qualified for this? Like, why are they asking me? Or like, what were you thinking?
I think that I was confident enough that I felt qualified, but I was definitely concerned that when people would look at my belt rank, they would wonder if I was qualified. So I had to, kind of project myself in a skilled enough manner and professional enough manner to carry the respect until I earned my black belt.
So what do you think they saw in you that made them think, oh, this brown belt, he could run a martial arts school?
Since this was back in 1991, I think it was primarily based on physical capability, right? Probably skill, and more so than some of the things we may look for today is, like personality and ability to help motivate and, help other people reach their goals. I think back then it was more about physical talent.
Okay, cool. So then you open up that first school. Do you still have that school now, or has it changed since then?
No. So about 2 years into that school, I bought my partner out. So it was solely mine. And then 4 years in, I sold it to one of my black belts, and they took that school over. So that's no longer mine. So I sold that in 1995. And then I opened my next school in 1996, which is in Warminster, Pennsylvania. And that school's still up and running and operating today. And that was our first anchor school where we started to expand from.
Okay, great. So I know you have 3 locations, sold 2, and then there's 3 more that you license out, right?
Right. So at one point we had 3 primary schools. I owned them all, and all our staff was there. And what we did is eventually we started to open satellite locations that were more like a licensing agreement, where I was not the owner operator. We're just licensing the program to students who came through our schools and wanted to expand and run their own martial arts school. And then once we got that started going, I sold 2 of the locations that I owned to my staff that was running them. And now I have 1 location that I own solely, and the other 5 operate as like a licensing type school.
Okay, that's great. So when you first started, was it in your mind, like your master plan to be, all right, eventually I'm going to sell these, or that just kind of happened? Like, how did you get there?
It was definitely not a master plan, right?
Okay.
It just kind of developed and evolved over time. I don't even think I had a plan to expand back in 1996 when we opened up. I was in my 20s, just getting married. And what happened is we reached a level of success in that first school where we had a lot of students. We had a lot of capable, qualified staff to teach and run classes. And we realized that if we're going to provide an opportunity for these people to do martial arts as a living and a career for themselves, we can't do it in one building. So we had our first expansion, and we spun out 2 of our top guys from the main school to start our second location. And we repeated that same process a few years later and spun into our 3rd location. And those 3 schools ran, for a while together. That was like our pyramid.
A lot of people who listen to the show are martial arts school owners, and most have 1 location, right?
Okay.
So I guess like what happened within your school? Was it like gross revenue, or was it a student count, or like what exactly happened to make you feel comfortable to open up another location? Was you had the people as resources? Like what made you do
Yeah,
that?
for sure. Definitely people resources. And I still am. And I was always the type of person who I like to be surrounded by a team. I like to work with other people. I'm not looking for like a solo type of career. So I knew that these people that were, not only employees of mine at the time and students of mine, but great friends, wanted to expand and open a martial arts school. So I'm like, well, let's do this together, and so I'll help fund it. We'll work it together. And, eventually we'll reach a partnership level in this school and we expanded from there so that we could keep ourselves, connected and close together.
So for people who are listening, how did you structure that? Like when you go over with them, like, because you have income coming in, but they're probably just instructors. They probably like make good money, right? I think you told me earlier, like you pay your instructors really well.
Yes, we pay our instructors really well. I believe in treating your people very well. So our goal is to get our head instructors to make a 6-figure salary so they feel like, they can live and support their families and, have the career that they love while still being able to afford life, so that's our goal.
And it's funny because I bet you a lot of people who are listening to this who are owners, they're probably thinking, oh man, I wish I can have a 6-figure salary, let alone like my instructors, right? So the fact you're able to afford that is, I think, a testament to how well the school is doing, right?
Yeah, you had mentioned gross revenue, right? So of course, everything kind of funnels back to the revenue of the school. If the school's not producing revenue, it's going to be very hard to expand because it's going to be hard to hire people, incentivize people to stay. What kind of future do they look to see for themselves? If the school that's operating isn't making enough where the owner is at least having a great lifestyle and providing it for his staff, what would make them believe that they could go do it themselves? So they have to have there has to be some vision for them to want to, achieve.
So how did you show them that vision? Like, was it, what is it that you showed them that made them think, okay, I want to do this. I want to do this too.
One thing is I think that we're pretty open with our statistics at the school. So once you become an employee and you're, working with us, it's been a few years, we're connected, right? So we talk about our goals for the business, student count, gross revenue, monthly revenue, and how to achieve it, how to acquire it, what amount's going to be profit, how it's being dispersed. So we paint a pretty clear picture. We don't keep it hidden. So if the school can earn X, you can earn Y. And if the school can earn 2X, you can earn 2Y. So we make it pretty clear and open and honest and very transparent.
Can you, if you don't mind, like sharing what some of those numbers look like? That way, if there's someone who's listening who's like, hey, I want this for my school, right? Like, how would I structure that incentive system where my instructors are incentivized to make more money and I'm incentivized to help support them, but also like you're not giving them all the profits, right? So generally, like, what's the rule of thumb you go by?
I think it's based on performance primarily. Like we call it a performance pay scale system, where you're going to have a base salary that's going to be somewhat lower, maybe like $36,000 a year starting point.
Okay.
But if your school grosses $30,000 a month, maybe there's, $3,000 bonus for every month that hits $30,000. If there's a $35,000 a month, we'll up it. If there's a $40,000 a month, it's $5,000 a month bonus. So now you're offsetting the base pay with the bonus money, and you're incentivized as a school owner or head instructor now to drive student count, to drive revenue so that you can earn more money. Because if the school's earning money, we all know, right, there's like a tipping point with profit. You have this cutoff, and then the more the school earns, a large degree of that becomes profit. So we would disperse that amongst the team and amongst the staff. If you're a school owner who wants to hoard that, then you're not going to be able to expand and grow and share that with other people, right? So it has to be a sharing mindset.
So at what point in the process did you go over those numbers with them? Was it like before you first started, or like once they bought in and that this is a lifestyle they wanted?
I think as we were hiring them as part-time instructors and let them know, okay, you're going to start working for us. Here's where we start you. But, as a head instructor, these are some of the benchmarks you can hit and you can make if you decide to make this a full-time career. And we'll offer the opportunity for you to open your own location, run your own location, be an employee, be a partner, whatever it is that you want to be in the future. And here are some of the levels you can reach financially based on your performance.
And I know for martial arts school owners, I think specifically, there's almost this weird feeling that when you run a martial arts school, it can't be about money, right? And B, you should kind of hide everything, right? Or don't tell other people, because if they find out you make money, then they're never going to want to, or you have a good lifestyle, they're going to be like, what's mine, right? Or what do I get?
It's a little bit of a limited mindset, right? I think first of all, the school has to make money. It has to be profitable, just like any business. A restaurant has to be profitable or it will close down. So a martial arts school has to be profitable or it will either close down or can't support a large enough staff to have a great program, or the owner is going to be struggling their whole life. And that's really not an ideal career. So I do think money is important, but you're not going to make high levels of money if you're not giving a good service and a good product. So they go hand in hand. So the better the service you provide, hopefully the more students you can create and retain, therefore your gross revenue goes up and up. So it's a hand in hand kind of walk there. The better you serve your students, the more money you can make. That's a win-win.
And what I like about what you said is you gave them that vision in the beginning. It wasn't like, oh, you did it when they were already an instructor and they were making a couple grand a month or something like that. You did it like right away and you gave them that vision and roadmap, right?
And, teenage years, 18, 19, high school, when they're ready, when they become an employee of the school and they start working for us, we want to let them know, hey, there's a future here for you if you like, or you choose this path. Here's what the future can be. Here's what it can look like. And it's based on you. Let's get it.
We use something at our schools called a career ladder, right? So similar to what you just said, where it's like, okay, you have the exact vision and you know exactly how to go from student to volunteer to assistant instructor to a certified instructor to a head instructor to a partner, and then eventually to oh my God, I'm forgetting the word, a developer. Okay, so when you develop multiple locations, and I think most martial arts school owners are so worried about telling people numbers. I think it's funny because a lot of school owners, they hide their numbers, and in doing so, they don't let their staff or their employees know what the potential is.
Right.
And then what happens? Well, they go off to college, they get another job, and then the school owner gets all frustrated and they're like, why won't anyone stay?
They feel like they invested time in helping develop an instructor and then they're gone.
And they get bitter about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can't find good help, right? You can't find people who are loyal, right? And it's like, why should someone have blind loyalty to your business if you're not going to compensate them properly or show them a vision?
Yeah, they have to know what their potential is as a career for them to pick that as a career, right? No, there's no other career where you don't know how much money you can make.
Yeah, exactly. Even like, if you join Chipotle, right? And you just making burritos all day and you're sitting there, put the chicken and the rice and stuff and everything. Okay, great. Yeah, you can start there. But I remember I got a marketing email from Chipotle, and I literally in the email, and this is just as a customer, not even as an employee, I never worked at Chipotle, but even as a customer, it said looking for career opportunities, and I literally had the ladder right there. It said exactly how much you make at each position and what that looks like. And I was like, that's what we need for our martial arts schools if you want to grow. You got to give them that vision. So when you gave them that vision, and you make sure that obviously first that you think they're going to be a good fit, a good culture fit for the school, and like, what does that process look like in terms of your partnership? Like, do you give them equity? Do they invest, or do they just open up under you and you just pay them well? Like, what did that look like from that first to the second one?
The first to second one, I fully funded it. And the two employees who worked there functioned as employees, but had profit sharing. And one thing you said about transparency with numbers, when we opened our third location, so I had, a full-time instructor and staff running school 1, school 2, and school 3. So everybody pretty much knows how much everybody else makes because it's the same pay scale system for everyone. So when we get together as a team, we discuss our stats. Everybody knows that base pay for head instructors maybe $36,000, but if you make $30,000 a month at your school, it's an extra $3,000. So, add that. If you make, like I said, we scale it up, right? 10% here, above 40, 15%, above 50, 20%. So everybody can figure out how much they're making because we know how much each school makes, right? So if one school's grossing 35,000, 145, 155, everybody knows how much the head instructor is making because they want to get to that number so they can make that too. So full transparency.
So what does the school have to make in order for a full-time instructor to make six figures? Like, what does that look like?
Probably about 50,000.
Okay, so at $50K a month, then the school operator, and this is like a full-time employee, right?
Full-time employee, yes.
Do you operate as one full-time employee that covers the school, or do you do two-person? How do you guys usually do it?
We always have 2 full-time employees and at least 1 assistant instructor.
Okay.
So depending on student count, school size, sometimes an additional 1 or 2 assistant instructors, but 2 primary full-time salaries.
Okay.
Because then when you start to try to put more of them in there, then it pulls away, right? Like, so that's where we realized we needed to expand. In order to pay 2, 3, 4 people, $100,000 a year. It's just not practical from one location. So we spin them off to their other locations so they can reproduce it there. And usually what happens in the beginning is the home school would support that salary for the first 90 days until the school starts generating its own income.
So when the school hits 50K, do both full-time people make 100K?
Head instructor makes more than program director.
Okay,
Program
got
director probably makes about 70% of that, 60 to 70% of that.
Okay, guys, so it makes them between 60 and 70K, something like that. Okay, cool. And so we know how to find the head instructors, right? Those are the people who are most of the time have martial arts experience and they've grown within your school. What about the program director? How do you find those people?
A couple of different ways. We have program directors who came up like a head instructor. They were students, came through the program, were there for a while, earned their black belts and put them in that position. Then we had, or we still have, one of our, longest employees was just a mom at the school who we thought would be a great fit and wound up becoming an employee. And then was telling the story to someone recently. We met a woman one time who was a waitress at a restaurant we went to for lunch for like 2 years. We would go every Monday for lunch as a team. And she was our server for 2 years. And we got to know her well. She had a great personality. And one day we're sitting there, we're like, why don't we offer Laura a job? She's got a great personality. She vibes with people. Why don't we get her involved in martial arts? And she just wants to, maybe work with us or work for us. She seems like the type of person that we want on our team. So we did that. And she wound up being a full-time PD for us for like 7 years till she decided to, have kids and take a different route. But yeah, great relationship, great story there. So totally outside of the martial arts, pulled in a full-time employee that worked seamlessly.
Were you worried that like she wasn't going to be a culture fit or she doesn't have a martial arts background, or at a time that wasn't a concern of yours?
We didn't worry that she didn't have a martial arts background because, part of the conversation was, as you come along and assimilate with us, you're going to also train. You're going to go to class a couple, nights a week. So
is that a requirement? Like, do you require they take class?
I don't think we required it. All we did was like, hey, it would probably be best if you become a student and understand the program. And then she, fell in love with classes and she trained until she got her black belt, of course, too. So she became a student second to being an employee.
So when you got to that second location and you had everything running with this new program director, right? So that was location number 2, or was that later? Or was that location number 3?
She became an employee at location number 2 after we opened location number 3.
Okay, cool. So how did you guys are all at lunch together, right, as a team, and you just noticed she has great personality skills or personable skills, and you think to ask her to get involved, like what did you say? Like, how did you actually ask her?
Well, we had talked about it prior. Me and Joe were talking like, what do you think about asking Laura if she wants to, think about coming to work for us? And, we realized like she would be a great fit. So I think we said to her one day, like, have you ever trained in martial arts? She's like, no, but I've always wanted to. And I'm like, well, what if I give you an opportunity? And then we talked about, her interest in martial arts training. And I said, are you going to school for anything? What's your career look like in the future? What are you doing? This was all I was doing as a part-time job. She's not sure what she wants. She didn't really have any good direction. And I was like, this is going to be perfect. So that's how it kind of worked its way into it.
So you really just found out like what her goals were and see if you could align it with what you offered. And if it did, then you offered her the job.
Yes. And I think it was kind of one of those things where we said, listen, the worst case scenario is you're going to get to train martial arts for a few months, have some fun, get in good shape, and, see if you like it. So
cool. And she stayed with you for 7 years.
7 years.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, great. And when you opened up location number 3 and you decided from there, did you think like, okay, I'm going to open up many more locations? Or was it just like based on the people that you had?
Yeah, it was based on the people that I had. I had at the time probably not visualized more than those 3 locations. My staff was tight. Schools were running profitable. I, freed up my time to stop being a day-to-day instructor and more like run the organization and, highlight with the black belts, things of that sort. So I was feeling like things were pretty good there. And then same scenario where we had up and coming people who were like, hey, I'd like to do this, or another instructor capable and qualified who wanted to run their own school. So that's what kind of pushed us into the licensing realm.
So as a owner who's no longer doing the day-to-day, what did that look like? How often were you going to school? What are you keeping track of? Like, what does that actually look like for you?
We unite as a team 2 times per week to train. Once per week is for martial arts training, and once per week is for like business training to review, events at the school, numbers, statistics, strategies, things of that sort to help drive the school. And then when we're doing our martial arts training, we're physically working out together and coming up with the best drills and curriculum for our students. So Monday, 9:30 to 12, training on the mat. Wednesday, 9:30 to 12.
2.5 hours?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it's casual, hang out. We gather like it's going to be a regular class. I run a class, we work out, and then, we hang out for the last hour or so, just chatting, coming up with drills and creating curriculum. And then on Wednesdays, we do something similar, but it's, more sitting in chairs around tables with coffees and chatting and doing business stuff.
So the other days of the week, as an owner who's not operating the school every day, what are you doing?
So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do my personal training. I train jiu-jitsu a lot. So I do jiu-jitsu training. And in the evenings, I bounce around some of the schools from time to time because I still kind of run what we call our black belt cycle. So every student from every location who's come up to the point where they're ready to go for their black belt, they go through a 3-month training cycle to prep for that black belt test. So I run that for all the schools at our, offsite corporate location. So the students from all the locations come meet with me once a week. And, I just help prep them and get them ready to peak, mentally and physically for their black belt test. So I have a connection to all of the schools. I'm just not running the day-to-day classes.
Mm. So is there certain stats you look at before you keep your thumb on within the schools that you're looking at? Not within the schools, are there certain statistics that you're looking at daily or weekly just to make sure they're in the right spot and they're going to where you want them to go?
Yeah. When we get together on Wednesdays, everybody kind of shares together collectively. Again, full transparency, location to location. How many new members you have this month? What's your retention look like? What's your active count? What's your gross revenue? What's your projected gross revenue? Monthly receivables versus new revenue. So, 5 to 7 basic metrics. That's all we really kind of focus on.
So how do you, when you have a new location with someone else running it, how do you grow it? What are some strategies you use, concrete methods you have to grow those locations?
Implementing the same strategies that the current schools have, right? We use something we call the 10 pillars of success. So the 10 pillars, whether it be class structure operations, enrollment operations, upgrade operations, testing procedures, all the standard operating procedures that we have in place, we're just going to shift over to the new location. And usually the staff has worked at one of our locations, so they're just implementing the new spot.
Okay, so usually they'll work at one of the other locations before they open up a new one. That way they already know the systems.
Correct.
Very cool. And then once you got to location number 3 and open, and then you started moving more to licensing. So how did that work out? How did you get to that? And how does that work?
We had a student who wanted to open up a location and run it. And I think at the time, the first 3 locations I funded myself and owned them and signed the lease and had all that liability. And I was at a point, I think, what? I didn't want to take that step again. So I was like, maybe it's better now if this person becomes the owner, operator, responsible person, financially for the school, and I'll just guide them and help them, let them be part of our team. So, maybe less of a financial return for me, but less of a financial, obligation or responsibility on my part too. So we just figured that was a win-win. Hey, you're still part of our team. You're going to benefit from our systems and our association. We're going to help you. You still have an instructor. You can continue to train and promote, and you can run your own martial arts school.
And they do it under the same brand.
Correct.
Right. So what's the brand, and what is it that comes with it that you're able to help them with?
So the name of our schools is East West Karate. And, all of our attire, our safety equipment, things of that sort, it's all branded. So, not only just, I guess, the physical brand, but it's the procedures, all the operating procedures that we share with them.
Very cool. And for us, by the way, as we grow our locations, and if you're hey, I want to be involved and, with us in terms of action karate, and you want to grow your locations based on those systems within our brand, we have a way to do that. If you're hey, I want to grow within my own brand, and that's what I do with Double Your Dojo, right? I teach you a lot of the systems that we use to grow and scale our schools so you can do it on your own within your own branding. Especially what's most important that I teach school owners how to do is how to grow without ads, okay? Which is through a triangle codex through schools, daycares, and businesses. So if that's something you want to do, reach out to me directly or visit our website, wyourdojo.com. But back to the regular scheduled program. So when you do the license agreement, what does that agreement look like? Is it like a flat rate? Is it percentage of revenue? How do you structure that?
It's just a flat rate. I made it very simple. It's just one flat rate monthly, and it's all simple and good. No, percentage deep connections to revenue. It's just a flat rate.
So how do you keep track to make sure that they're staying true to the brand, to East West brand?
Well, I think one way I do that without physically being on premises is the fact that we all connect twice a week, every week.
So even the license locations?
Correct. They come, we train together, we work out together, and then we sit and we discuss, operating the school together. And they're sharing their stats collectively with everybody. So we kind of know. And, we ask if there's any challenges, what's happening that we could help you with. And it feels like the licensing schools are just like our regular schools. Like you wouldn't know there's a difference in the way that we treat each other and operate.
So eventually you'd go to sell a couple of your locations, right? You'd sell 2 of them for 7-figure income, which is awesome. I mean, most people, I think, have an idea they want to sell their school, but never really either find a buyer or know how to structure it, or they don't have good enough systems or people in place. So it's never gonna work, right? They're grossing $12K a month or $20K a month. They're like, I want to sell it for $800,000, right? So
it's not realistic.
Yeah. So you sold both for a combined 1.2, right? 1.2 million. So I guess my question is, why did you sell? And then what did that process look like, selling a martial arts school?
Well, I sold the school to the head instructor. The first scenario, I sold the school to the head instructor who was running the day-to-day operations anyway. So I knew capable of continuing it in the same path. The school was very profitable at the time. And, I just kind of took a look at a number of okay, so if I can generate this much income staying here and keeping it, maybe I'll pick this number to sell it and see if this person's interested in owning it on their own, So we went through the process of just looking at what the possibilities were for him to earn, being a sole owner. And then, went through the process of shifting the lease into their name and all the, the things that go with, what am I trying to think of? Like insurance, all the transitions of the legal entity stuff. This particular person got a loan, paid me in full, paid back the loan. And then, as soon as they paid off, then the profit's theirs for, as long as they run the school. It was kind of like the scenario, hey, if you pay back this loan, that's equivalent to the money I'm taking away anyway as the owner. So there's no transition for you in your salary. You're going to make the same amount. And in 5 years, maybe when your loan's paid off, now that profit's yours.
Now all profit's yours. Very cool. Exactly. And he did that same process for both locations.
Correct.
It was all a former student.
The actual head instructor.
Oh, head instructor. Sorry, but I'm assuming a student first, and then became a head instructor.
Student first and head instructor. Yes.
So why did you sell if it was so profitable?
I think I was just looking to limit the exposure that I had on me. Right, 3 schools, 3 leases in our state. Leases were personally guaranteed. Funding, some other scenarios that I was interested in, investments and things of that sort. So I thought that the money would be beneficial. Keeping the connection with everybody would just be a win-win. And I kept, one location that I currently have. So right now it's 1 that's mine, 5 that are licenses. We operate as a team.
Cool. And I think one thing that's really cool that we haven't really talked about is the one location you mentioned is how far away from one of our locations?
80 yards.
It's like super close, right?
Yeah.
Like you could actually throw a belt and from one location to the other.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, except I know your school does very, very well, right? And I know our school there does very, very well. Yeah. And despite that, I think martial arts school owners, for some reason, there's this weird thing where they like to throw stones at each other. And even though we're both quote unquote competitors, it's not like you're just in the same town. You are super close. And even with that, I know you still talk to the operator of that school and hang out and get lunch together.
Yeah,
right?
The owner operator of that location and I are friends. Yeah, we've gone to had lunch many times together.
Yeah, and it's not like dog eat dog. You're successful or he's successful. You both do great, right?
And we both share ideas with each other. I believe in that old adage, the rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
Like there's plenty of students in our communities to support two schools that happen to be close together. So
Right.
I don't think either of our schools are detracting from each other.
Right. And I think for martial arts school owners specifically, they think that if there's a lot of competition, it affects them. But most of the students you get, most of the time, are the students you earn, right? Like it's because you went to that community event. It's because maybe you did the Triangle Codex and learned how to recruit members from schools, daycares, and businesses, or it's because you ran ads specifically, right? Like you earn that. There's some people that are just going to Google and find you, or just drive by and find you, sure, right? But there's always, I think the majority is like you earn those members, like those are referrals.
Google's, people Googling and walking in are much less frequent than internal generation, whether it's something you did outside, like you said, with visiting schools or your own students referring. Yeah. So,
and the other side to that is like, okay, if you run a school and it's crap, like you're next door to them and it's crap, and they tell their friends about it, they're going to say, oh, don't do karate. I did karate and it was horrible, right? And so it hurts everyone. But if they say, oh, karate is great, first of all, I'd say half the kids, they don't even know the name of their karate school if you ask them. Like, if you ask them what style they did or where they go, they'd be like, karate, right? No matter how many times we say our brand name or what's on their shirt.
They might know their instructor's name.
They might. Might. So it really, really does impact everyone in a positive way when you're doing well, and impacts everyone in a negative way when you're not. And the fact that we can be in this room and talk about best practices, I wish like more martial arts school owners did this. Because if they did, our industry as a whole would be way better. We wouldn't have so many martial arts school owners struggling to make a living and saying, oh, well, that school's a McDojo, or that school doesn't hold up to the same standards that we do. It's like, dude, you're just throwing stones because as an excuse for your own unsuccessful business. Yeah. Right. And I think it's that mentality that you have is like, hey, we can still both chat and share ideas and both get better. That makes you guys both successful. Yeah. Right. Makes your schools and our schools. So if you're giving advice to someone who maybe they have one school and maybe they're doing, I don't know, $20K a month. Okay. Maybe 10, let's say 10 to 20K a month. And they want to get to that next step. They want to get, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. Right, like our schools are really wanting to be at least at 50. Our best ones will be in the 80s. Our newer ones will be anywhere between the 20s and 40s, right? If they're not as mature. Like, what advice would you give them to get to that next level from going from like pretty good, or like okay, you maybe have some profit to like, okay, now I'm actually making a great living. I'm making multiple six figures and feeling good.
Well, as you know, the answer probably isn't as simple as one or two things, right? Yeah. I remember a long time ago, we were hosting a seminar at our school, and we were talking one location, under 4,000 square feet, about 450 active members. So it seemed like a crowded school. It was a busy school, profitable school. And the person who came to teach the seminar said, what are you doing to have all these students? What do you do? What's the secret? I'm like, well, the secret is there's 100 things we do. It's not one thing. So we kind of formulated what we call the teaching triangle: education, motivation, inspiration. And if you're touching all three of these aspects, you're educating your students. You're teaching them martial arts, quality martial arts. That's the education part. Motivation, you're making your classes exciting and fun and, giving people a reason to want to attend. And then inspiration, you have to inspire them above and beyond the physical kicks and punches. So we want to teach about goal setting and for kids, character development, confidence to stand up to bullies, confidence to face challenges. And, we're going to struggle in life. And how do we overcome these challenges? So balancing the education, motivation, inspiration is kind of how we approach the curriculum on the floor. And I think that that's what carries over to the referrals and the growth and the retention in the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And then using best practices, like focusing on keeping your students from quitting, focusing on new members, focusing on enrollments, like new members and retain, right? New and retain, attract, renew. You have to have that aspect. If you want to grow your school, you need new members and you have to retain the old ones as much as possible because people are always going to drop out for whatever reason. So the better you are at retention, the better you are at recruiting. That's the growth pattern for the school.
My favorite thing is when I talk to a school owner and they're like, oh man, all we get is referrals. People love our program, right? Oh, and no one quits here. It's like, so we have one quit every couple of months. It's like, that's definitely not true.
Not true.
yeah, maybe you can have less quits because you have like 30 or 40 students. And by the way, the only reason like your referrals are so good because that's the only students you're getting,
Right.
right? If you have 2 students a month from referrals, then that sticks out to you. Oh, we're a strong referral program,
Mhm.
right? But if you have 200 students or 300 students and you're doing 50, 60, 70K a month,
Mhm.
like you're automatically going to have more students that drop out and you're going to have to rely on other streams of new channels of new students coming in the door, right?
Yep.
Whether it's paid advertising or organic advertising, so students that you earn and not buy. And if you want to have growth, you really want to have all those legs under the table, because
Mhm.
sometimes I've hired a million agencies in the past to run our ads. Sometimes it's great and it's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Usually it falls off after the first couple of months, if it even gets there.
Yep.
We're sitting on our hands and
Yeah.
like we don't
Hoping
know
and
what to do.
waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, hoping waiting people come in, right? So for us, like what I care about most is like, okay, how can I go out and grab members and bring them in the door? How can I earn them?
Mhm.
Because online advertising changes all the time. They change the algorithm, they
Yep.
change the rules, the price goes up no matter
Mhm.
what you do, right? Price always goes up. And then of course there's low quality leads. And also when you have to switch like advertisements plus switch agencies all the time, it's a giant pain in the ass,
Yeah.
right? So for us, like, what do we always like to focus on? And we have our own triangle, like I mentioned before, kind
Yeah,
of in our own triangle is schools, daycares, and businesses,
Yep.
right? And if we can connect with those with a systematic way and actually recruit new members in the door, we never have to rely just on Facebook or Google ads
Right.
or people just showing up as referrals.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being on here today. I really
Yeah.
had fun with the conversation. And if someone wants to reach out to you because they're thinking about maybe like, how do I license or how do I grow? And they don't want to maybe ask me. Maybe they want to ask someone else,
Sure,
right?
sure.
How would they reach out to you?
They can reach out to me via email. My email is my last name, Vacca, EWK for East West Karate, VACCA, EWK @gmail.com.
Awesome.
Email me anytime.
Awesome. And if you want to learn the systems to be able to grow your school organically without paid ads and control the flow of new students, you can reach out to me, Matthew at doubleyourdojo.com, or find me on Instagram, Black Belt Brenner1, or on Facebook, Matthew Brenner. Thanks for listening and talk soon. Bye, guys.
Thank you.